The 119th edition of the Roy's Boys podcast starts right now.
Carolina basketball family is the strongest there's ever been, there ever will be.
Nate Humphrey hands Gingrich the ball. Pushes into Hubert Davis. 8 seconds. Davis trying to get free. Over to Fox. Fox, baseline. Up for the shot. Good! Off the glass! Oklahoma calls timeout, but the game is over! The game is over! Carolina has upset number 1 Oklahoma! And ready on his second attempt. That one is no good! They battle for it. Loose ball. Recovered Marvin. He scores!
With 20 seconds left to play, goes back to Michael Jordan. Jumper from out on the left. Good! 63-62, 13, 12, 11. Georgetown with one timeout. Fred Brown looking. Oh, way to Worthy. Worthy 5. The Tar Heels are going to win the national championship.
Carolina with foul. He takes the timeout. They're out of timeout. Technical foul. Technical foul. Brown gets it into Williams. Here comes Williams front court. Williams on the drive. Gets it back out to Head. Long outside shot. Short rebounded. It's over! Carolina has won the national championship! And how about them Tar Heels? They are the national champions!
The Tar Heels are the national daggum champions!
You competed. And that's what it takes to win big-time games. You've got to compete. You do it with your brain, and you got to do it with your heart, too. And that's pretty doggone good.
From QCBroadcasting.com, this is the Roy's Boys podcast with your host, Josh Marlowe. Hey everybody, welcome into another edition of the Roy's Boys podcast. We are powered by Carolina Electrical Services. We've got a fun show today. We get to talk about a Carolina victory and look ahead to Saturday's game on the road at Syracuse, and a fun topic mixed in as well. Anthony, for the first time since the last time they played NC State, Carolina finally victorious, snaps a 7-game losing streak, second longest in program history, with an 85-79 win over the rival Wolfpack, who entered the game playing for their tournament lives. Just a feel-good win for a team that has blown so many games late, whether it's been on in the Smith Center or on the road. They made enough of the winning plays in the final couple minutes to finally get a win. And even though they're 11-17 and they're in the bottom of the ACC, this season won't be remembered for a lot, but at least they can say they swept NC State.
Yeah, so I wanted to start by pointing this out. There was a guy that I think has listened to the show for a while now on Facebook. He says that we sound like we do the podcast after taking long naps and repeatedly hitting the sleep alarm on our clock. So I just wanted to address that. If you're wondering why we've had some somber podcasts lately, maybe you should follow the team because, if we're being honest, this team has not been good this year. This is not going to be one of those podcasts. So, Mr. Swink, congratulations, you'll get a triple podcast out of us today. So the energy apparently needs to be higher. We've been asking people for reviews, so we need to pull the stick out of our rear ends and get this going, apparently. But I'm extremely excited to talk about a huge win for Carolina because this is the type of win that we've been asking this team to find along the way here for the last month or so, and they finally get the win. And now you feel like, yet again, and you said it last night, you feel kind of stupid for saying it, but I think we all feel the same way. If this team plays like they played in this game against NC State, with that type of energy, getting the ball inside, Garrison Brooks can play as well as he played, you get some good perimeter shooting, then they can make a run. So, yeah, it's one of those games where I think, we all like to say, you beat NC State. That's great. NC State can't find a way to beat us on a down year, which is hilarious. Their program is a complete failure because the Wolfpack are crap. if we're being honest, Kevin Keats probably going to be on the hot seat after the season's over because he can't find a way to beat Carolina, which is hilarious. But really the thing that I think people should be looking at is there's a lot of hope for this team. I don't know if they're going to be able to make a run in the ACC tournament. I want to believe so, too, but that's still asking a ton of this team because, yes, they have to win the NCAA. They have to win the ACC tournament to make the NCAA tournament. No matter what, this team will not get in just because even if they get everybody back and you try to make the argument, well, they're a different team than they were when they were injured, doesn't matter. They will not put this team in, no chance in hell, unless they win the ACC tournament. Might be asking too much, but if anything, this is huge for the offseason and especially for next year.
Yeah, I mean, the thing I took away from this was Carolina won despite not playing great. They got down 10-0 on the jump. They came out. They weren't ready defensively. State burned them for a couple of 3-pointers.
Game against them as well earlier this year.
Yep. So you were able to battle back from an early 10-point deficit. You missed 8 foul shots. You turned it over a ton, and yet you still made enough. And I've stressed this all during the season when the losses started piling up. They've made a lot of good plays, but they didn't make winning plays. They didn't play winning basketball. There was a stretch in the second half where State had erased a 3-point deficit at halftime and had built a 7-point lead, and the game was hanging in the balance. It was either Carolina's going to push back and we're going to have another close game, maybe one of the better finishes in the rivalry in the last couple years, or State's going to do what they need to do, put the game away. They couldn't afford a bad loss on their tournament resume, and we would lose an 8th straight game. And Carolina responded 21-4 run at one point. They erased a 7-point deficit, made a double-digit deficit. But even when the lead grew to double digits, because of the way this season has gone, we knew game's not over. You expected State to push back. And I found it somewhat ironic that when we came back from the under 4 timeout, and they were coming, and the silent reporter made the comment that Kevin Keats was confident in the State huddle because Carolina will probably fold again because that's just what they do. Well, that's maybe what we do this year. But what also we do this year is we still beat you despite not being great. But State, you just pulled a State. You beat Duke last week, but you can't beat Carolina, a team that you're significantly record-wise better than and have a lot more playing for. And at one point, it looked like Carolina was going to fold. But Cole Anthony made a tough jump shot. State continued to put Garrison Brooks, who I get at a 56% foul shooter, odds on is probably going to leave a couple of ones at the foul line. He converted on all but 2 free throws in the victory. And that was the thing. Despite everything that they still did wrong, and they did a lot wrong, the team actually looked like a team that has made improvement. And I think that they've improved from game to game and from week to week. It just hasn't been rewarded with the victory. This time, the improvement and the dedication to the process, and they didn't quit on Roy Williams. They didn't quit on themselves. Finally gets rewarded with a win that, albeit very meaningless, still very sweet.
Well, I wouldn't say it's meaningless. I mean, for Carolina, doesn't hold a lot of value. But again, as we talked about, if they can gain some momentum and try to make any sort of run, then they needed to find a way to at least end that losing streak and get something going before they got to the ACC tournament. They couldn't walk into the ACC tournament with absolutely no momentum because I mean, even if this team can find a way to win the next 2 games to close the regular season before they head to Duke, you're asking a lot of that team to go into Cameron and find a way to come out of there with a win. It's definitely possible. NC State showed us that, but it's still going to be really, really difficult. I think that this was something for Carolina, but it was definitely bigger for State. This is a huge blow for their tournament chances. And I know that Joe Lenardi still has them in the field. There's a lot of other bracket analysts that have them in the first 4 out, some of them even right on the brim of falling into the next 4 out. That's a bad loss to Carolina. And you got to think, this is NC State, so they play Pittsburgh next. They could fall in that one, or they still have to play Wake. There are opportunities for this team to drop another game. That's why it was so big for them to find a way to fight through this. But it came down to, like you talked about, the winning plays. And that shot from Cole Anthony was huge. When they were up by 4, he extends it back out to 6. Gonna admit it, I was nervous when Garrison Brooks was at the line late in the game. He went there with 6 for 6 from the free throw line in clutch time in the last minute, and that's what you needed from him. And you know, you got to just really hand it to him, because I think that he had really been hard on himself. A lot of the fan base kind of was giving him a very well-deserved pass because of what he did early in the ACC schedule. Garrison was not giving himself a pass. When he had been struggling at the foul line, when he had been struggling from the field, you could tell that he was letting it bother him. And this was the game that he needed, because you add him to the list of guys that have killed State. It's amazing the transition from Marcus Page to Luke Ney to Garrison Brooks. It's just seamless. Garrison just took over the game, and I thought probably played the best game that we've seen from him since Cole Anthony returned, and I don't even really think it's close. And that's exactly what you needed. You look at everybody else on the court that played well. I mean, Cole Anthony had probably the best game since his return. Maybe, honestly, the best game probably since Notre Dame, because he had 19 points but was extremely efficient. He shared the basketball the way he was supposed to. And for the most part, there were a couple of bad passes here and there, but that was, again, the whole team making some just unbelievably head-scratching plays, including the Justin Pierce fully cross-court pass that luckily he was able to make up for by coming in from behind and stealing a pass right before halftime. But for the most part, Colvin makes the decisions that have really just killed him throughout this season, especially as of late, trying to split double teams that he didn't need to. Trying to just do way too much going to the basket. We didn't see that from Cole Anthony. He was 7 of 12 from the field. That was great. And then to cap it all off, we finally get to come on this podcast and talk about Christian Keeling performing well in a win. 16 points, on 7 of 9 shooting. And hit 2 big threes and looked confident. And we were talking about how confident he had looked in the middle of this losing streak. Now he finally gets a game where he can feel like I contributed and it paid off. And that, I think, is just huge for him. I mean, we talk about him gaining confidence along the way. Doing it in a win now, I think, is going to be the biggest confidence booster for a guy that I'm going to continue to say it. Even though Cole Anthony had a good night in this game, I still think right now Christian Keeling is probably your best perimeter shooter at the moment.
Well, the thing with Keeling is, and I'll take a lot of blame for this, his play has drastically improved in the last month. But it's hard to point that out when the team is losing to begin with. And also realize that in November and December, he legitimately looked like a player that didn't belong in that kind of uniform. Now he is.
Right.
He now...
I wanted